Section 3.8 is also a review from Algebra 1, but it's a review of slopes of parallel and perpendicular lines and then also writing equations for those. So first off, remembering that slopes of parallel lines are always going to be equal to each other. So if one line has a slope of 2, then the parallel line will also have a slope of 2. This is also saying that if I know the slopes of two distinct non-vertical lines are equal, then I know those lines are parallel. The other important piece is slopes of perpendicular lines. Slopes of perpendicular lines always multiply to a -1. So the most important thing for you to utilize is the fact that their slopes will be opposite and reciprocals of each other. Now remember, opposite means I am changing the sign, and reciprocal means I am going to be flipping the numerator and denominator of that slope. So let's take a look at an example. It says line A has a slope of -4/5 and line B has a slope of -4/5. Are those lines parallel, perpendicular, or neither? Well, they have the same slope. In order for them to be parallel, they have to have the same slope. So I would put parallel. Second question. Line A has the equation y equals 2/3 x minus 1, and line A is perpendicular to line B. What's the slope of line B? Now when they give me this form, remember this is in slope-intercept, so my slope is this number next to the x spot. So they're talking about 2/3. So if I am perpendicular to this line, I would need to do the opposite and the reciprocal of that number. So if I have 2/3, then that means I would do the opposite, which is changing the sign so it becomes negative, and then I would flip it, so then it would become -3/2. So the slope of my perpendicular line would be -3/2. Let's take a look at one more. Line A passes through the points 6, 10, and 4, 7. Line B passes through the points 7, 3, and 9, 6. Are those lines parallel, perpendicular, or neither? In order to find what kind of lines those are, you would need to find those slopes. So here comes that slope formula that we used. So I went ahead and did the first one. I did 7 minus 10 and 4 minus 6 and got -3/2, which will simplify to a positive, -3 over -2, which will simplify to a +3/2. Then I found the slope for line B. Line B, I did 6 minus 3 on top. Bottom, I did 9 minus 7. So then I got a +3/2. Noticing that these are the same number, so therefore my lines are parallel. Pause the video and try the got it questions. In the got it questions, it says letter A, I'm going to be perpendicular to the line that has a slope of -2/7. So that means I need to do the opposite, which makes it positive, and then I need to flip it. So that slope would be 7/2. Then the second question asks me to find if they're parallel, perpendicular, or neither. So line A, I would need to find the slope. So when I did 2 minus 6 and -1 minus -13, I got -4 over 12, which will reduce to -1/3, and you always want to make sure you reduce your slopes. Line B, I did 7 minus 6 and then 6 minus 3 and got +1/3. These are not the same, so they're not parallel. These are not opposite and reciprocals. So in order to be perpendicular, this would have to have been flipped, because remember, both things have to occur for it to be perpendicular. So this is a case where it is neither. Okay, the second part of this lesson is writing the equation. And we practiced a lot of that in the last section. But kudos to us, we only have to do this in slope-intercept, so that makes it a lot easier. We don't have to take the time to go through how to do it in point-slope. So here we go. What's an equation of the line that's parallel to this and goes through this point? Step one is you want to find your slope. So if I am doing parallel and my slope is -3, then the slope that I will use will be that same number. So I will use -3 for my slope as well. Step two is we want to find our y-intercept. So keep in mind we already said our slope is -3 and they gave us this point. So what we're going to have to do is just like when we were writing our equations before in section 3.7, we're going to take this slope-intercept form and we're going to plug in a point for x and y, and we're going to plug in our slope for m. So I plugged in those numbers. I'm going to multiply here and then subtract 3 over, and I got my y-intercept to be 5. So then the last step is I'm going to write out my equation. So my equation will be in slope-intercept, and I'll put in my slope, which is y equals negative 3x, and then put in my b, which I found is 5. Let's take a look at another one. This is asking me to find what's the equation of the line perpendicular to that and contains that point. So it's still the same steps. Step 1, we're going to find our slope. So since we're doing perpendicular, I have to change that number for my slope. So I'm going to do the opposite and the reciprocal. So my slope that I need to use is negative 5. Then I'm going to use the point that they gave me and my new slope to come up with my new b. So I'm going to plug in negative 5 for my m, and I'm going to put 15 in for the x and negative 4 in for the y. Then I'm going to multiply here and add it over, so I got b to be 71. So then I'm going to write out my new equation. Now this is the equation with my new slope and my new y-intercept. So that means I'm going to have y equals negative 5x, because that's my new slope, and my y-intercept. Okay, one more. The difference in this question is because it's in point slope, so I just wanted to make sure you had this in case you come across it in an IXL. We're doing perpendicular, and my slope and point slope is right next to the set of parentheses. So I'm going to have to change my slope in order to do it. So the steps are the same. My slope is going to change to opposite reciprocal of 1/3, so that's going to change to negative 3, and then I'm still going to use this point. So then I'm going to plug in my point for x and y, plug in my slope, multiply, add over 9, and so my y-intercept is 13. So then my equation is y equals, with my new slope, negative 3x plus 13. Alright, pause the video and try the next two questions. Alright, on the first question, it's asking for the parallel line. So that means first thing I'm going to do is find my slope. So the slope is going to stay the same as this. So that means it's going to be negative 1 since it's parallel. And then I'm going to use my point to find my y-intercept. So I'm going to plug in negative 5 for x, and I'm going to plug in 3 for y, and put in negative 1 for my m. Then I'm going to multiply, subtract 5 over, and my b is negative 2. So your equation should be y equals negative 1x minus 2. Now let's look at a perpendicular question. Since I'm doing perpendicular, this slope has to change. So that means I'm doing opposite and reciprocal of negative 3, which means it's going to become positive 1/3. Now I'm going to plug in my point for 7 for y and negative 3 for x, and then I'm going to multiply and add 1 over. So my new equation would be y equals 1/3 x plus 8. Now the tricky part that I remember when I was teaching in Algebra 1 is students forgot to change the slope. So remember, if you're doing perpendicular, it has to change, and my equation is using this piece. You are not using anything else from this equation. You are only using it for the slope part. Okay, let me know if you have any questions.